Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Economies and Neighbourhoods Scrutiny panel this afternoon. My name's Harpreet, I'm the chair of the committee, and firstly we'll go around the members. Martin?
Councillor Martin Bolt, Murfield Ward.
Robert? If you just use your...
Councillor Robert Idle, Gorka Ward.
John?
Councillor John Taylor, Kirkburton Ward.
Councillor Yusra Hussain, Batley West Ward.
Thank you. And we have had apologies from, just bear with me, Chris Friend, Andrew Bird and Gwen Law. So we've got minutes of the previous meeting. We've got two sets of minutes. There's the 6th of January minutes which have been amended. Can we get those signed off, members? Yes? Okay, thank you very much. And then we've got the 8th of February minutes, and can we get those signed off as well, members? Yeah, thank you very much. And we noticed a couple of typos, which Councillor Taylor told us about, so we'll get those sorted. Interests, are there any interests for members to declare? No? Okay. And we've had no deputations or petitions, and we've had no public question time either. I forgot to say, I just wanted to say at the beginning of the meeting, obviously it's been a very challenging time in the world at the moment, and we've got the issue in Ukraine and Russia, and obviously we've got a strong historical Ukrainian community in Huddersfield, so I think everyone here would just want to provide our support and solidarity to Ukrainians in Huddersfield. So I'll just pass that on, and Martin's got his colours on today as well, so we're all thinking of you today, and for a long time, no doubt. So we're going to, today we're looking at the Huddersfield Blueprint, including the Cultural Heart programme. So we've got a number of presentations. I want to thank everyone who's here today. So we've got Joanne, we've got David Glover, Joanne Bartholomew. We've got cabinet members here as well, Eric and Peter. And we've got our architects, George and Helen, who will be speaking later as well. We're going to start off with Joanne. Now, she's got limited time because she's a very busy person. Yes, thank you, Lan. Thank God for your land. But just say when Joanne does a presentation, we're going to take questions after a presentation because she's got to leave to go to another meeting. But before that, we're going to go to portfolio holders, Peter and Eric. So if you want to, if you could just use your mic, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think members of the committee and while your audience have been waiting for more detailed information. There's been often a frustrating dialogue about this. You've been told verbally what's going on, etc. Today, I think you'll see some detailed exemplars of what literally is going on within the cultural heart and generally the other parts of the overall blueprint. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, and I'm sure quite happy with the progress that's been made by our consultants. Not that they're deciding events, but they're certainly guiding events to help us to frame how we're going to develop this. And I'll pass on very quickly to Joanne, who will take it further.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Joanne Bartholomew and I'm Director for Development. So we've got a two-part presentation for you here today. The first is that I'm going to give you an update on the overall general blueprint, and then I'm going to pass over to David, and David's going to take you through the cultural heart with some quite exciting visuals from colleagues from the architect's practice and beyond. So if we just turn to the blueprint as the starter, and I have got the slides up behind Scrutiny. They don't appear to be on that visual, so apologies for that. I'm on the big screen. So to start off with, it's important to refresh ourselves around what the blueprint is about. And it's not just about us as a local authority bringing forward things that transform our town centre. So here we have a couple of key sort of gateway buildings. One is 103 New Street, which is known to most of us affectionately as the old Co-op building, which has been brought forward as student apartments. Most of you go past will have seen that the scaffold has gone down on that building, and it's progressing well towards getting to an occupation status. So that's a key building for us on the edge of the ring road. As well as that, one of our other key partners is Kingsgate and the Light Cinema moving into Kingsgate. They are currently moving forward with being out for tender for that work and expect construction to happen, I would say, over the summer months. We'll expect that to start, but we can update Scrutiny accordingly. So moving away from some of our town centre partners and onto the things that we're shaping. It wouldn't be an attractive town centre for our residents, for our businesses or for visitors without us putting significant effort into our public realm. And there are two key flagship projects for the public realm, New Street and Clothall Street. There's been significant work going on and the advanced cellar works are on site at this moment in time. Businesses have been engaged significantly around particularly the New Street angle. As most of you who walk up and down there will notice, there's quite a vibrant cafe culture going on down there, and the New Street scheme not only respects that but enhances that, and that expects to be on site over late summer and completion into early 2023, which will give a much more family-friendly feel to that area of town and actually work on providing a safe area for people to feel in the town centre. I want to update you on the George Hotel. As we know, it's been something that everybody's having a keen interest in. Just to remind Scrutiny, the building is in council ownership. And we have £2.4 million worth of external investment that is supporting us in the delivery of that particular building. We're already on site, having done some aspects of strip out. For those of you that want to know what technically that means, we've done an internal asbestos strip, and in the next couple of weeks there'll be further work on site that will undertake weatherproofing and to take out some of the further internals of the building. All that work is being undertaken hand in hand with Historic England. For those of you that don't know, that's the new name for English Heritage. This is a listed building and we do need to respect that. Our ambition for this particular building is that we move to have a high quality hotel operator. The current layout of the building actually only lends itself to around 60 bedrooms, which makes it commercially unviable in that context. So we are now moving forward with plans that will bring in excess of a 90-bed hotel there, working with Historic England to ensure that the building is sympathetically changed in order to maintain the listing and the grandeur that it places on the square, but whilst giving us a quality 90-bed hotel space. And we expect within the next few weeks, by the latest the end of March, to be out to the hotel market getting expressions of interest around that, and that will come through our development manager for that, which is Queensbury. Next, if we can move down from St George's Square to the Northumberland Street Regeneration project, which is phased around the market. This isn't just about the market, this is actually about that whole area. On a later slide, I'll talk about the importance of the station to stadium gateway, and this particular building is incredibly important to that area of town. It's a chance for us to regenerate that area in a clear way that makes a statement about how important our market offer is to us as a town centre, but whilst being very creative around what we do with that building, so having a different leisure opportunity around there. We are currently exploring getting ready for a levelling up round 2 fund bid for that, and a series of options around use within the building, which will extend the use from a normal sort of shopping day into the early evening and across the weekend, and create more opportunities for jobs and growth in a much needed part of town. And if I move on to the Station to Stadium Enterprise Corridor, which takes us, for a bit of orientation, from the railway station down to the stadium and all of the infrastructure, land, assets and businesses on the way down. It would be remiss of me to mention that and not mention one of our key partners, which is Huddersfield University, and the significant investment in their National Health Campus. The first phase of which will bring a £45 million construction into that area and look at creating opportunity to put themselves and ultimately our district on the map around health innovation. I was very pleased earlier this week to attend a lecture by Professor Liz Town-Andrews on what they want to see within there, and it really is cutting edge and helping us understand how we support that healthcare sector. But that's not the only bit down there. There are a lot of key buildings that are owned by our partners, and certainly development of some of our underutilised sites down there and respecting the setting of the canal is something that's working forward, and we expect over the summer and into the autumn to bring more exciting news and opportunities about that. So that is the end of my piece on the general blueprint. At this point, I'll take any questions if there are any, and if not, I'll move on to the cultural heart.
Robert?
Yeah, learning tea. Those are three quite exciting projects. The thing that I have to comment on is connectivity. How are we going to get the people around, particularly the older end? I believe, and here I'm willing to be shot down, the little circle buses now are stopped, but I may be wrong on that one. But if you have somebody coming out of the bus station who's not fully mobile, how are they going to get the benefit of those fantastic projects that you've got in hand?
Thank you, Councillor Idale. That's a question that has been something that we as officers have been working through over the last two or 3 months, and will continue to do so. For me, I think there's two key phases to your question. One is, during what is going to be a significant amount of construction, how do people get about the town, enjoy the town, and how do businesses thrive? And post all of the construction, where do we direct people to so that they're able to best access the cultural heart, best access Northumberland Street? If they want to do some general banking on the high street, how do they go about that? So Mark Scarr and Simon Taylor are currently working on a people and vehicle movement strategy for the town centre, and I'd be happy to bring that back here when that's ready.
Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a few comments and questions, but I'm going to start with something a bit more generic, if I may. The last time the Cultural Heart was brought to this Scrutiny committee, I was grumpy. That's the word I tend to use, isn't it? I was grumpy about the fact that information was put in the public domain before it was brought to scrutiny. We've had exactly the same thing happen again. So I'd ask the Cabinet members and officers to reflect on whether they are listening to scrutiny. We should be given the opportunity to scrutinise what's being brought forward before we have press releases being issued by the council about it, because it kind of gives the impression you're not actually interested in listening to scrutiny if you do it in that order. And I was quite particularly grumpy about it last time, and probably, if I'm honest, even more grumpy and disappointed this time, that it appears that with these regeneration issues, the administration isn't listening to scrutiny and isn't treating us with respect that I would expect. So I'm very disappointed that things are being put in the public domain before they've been through this committee. I'd like to talk about the George Hotel, if I may. I came to Cabinet last week, I think it was, with a very simple question to ask. I didn't ask to see anything. I didn't ask to breach any confidentialities or anything at all. I asked a very, very simple question, which was a business case produced prior to the acquisition of the George Hotel? I still haven't had a definitive answer on that. I don't know whether I'll get one today or not. But there's more when you start to look at this. So if you put that question to one side, I'd like to understand what the plan was. And I don't mean project plan. I mean, what was the plan? What was the vision? What was the idea behind the decision to suddenly purchase the George Hotel? I recall at the time one of my colleagues, Councillor Richard Smith, was suggesting there wasn't an urgency and that if necessary we could have gone down the compulsory purchase route, which probably would have cost the council maybe less money. But there was a sense of urgency, and I suspect that was behind the desire to have the hotel in the council's ownership so that it could be part of the bid for the Rugby League Museum, which we all know how that ended up. So I'd be interested to know, what was the plan for the George Hotel? Clearly, it wasn't originally to be a 90-bedroom hotel, because we know from this paperwork and from the leaked report that was a recommendation from the review of this. So what was the original plan? What was the intention for this hotel? How has that changed? What impact has that had? How have the costs changed? Because presumably we had an understanding of what we were going to spend on the George Hotel to bring it back into use when we purchased it, or at least one would hope we had. And the administration needs to do a fair amount of work now to rebuild the trust they've broken with the other parties because of the way this has been managed and been dealt with. I've said that, you know, if my group was in the administration, we would set up a suitable group, cross-party, that could have access to all of the confidential papers with the suitable confidentiality in place so that we could build that confidence across party. Because what's happening in this regeneration is important to the whole of the district. It's important to all of the political parties. And at the moment, we have an administration that won't share information, that keeps changing things, and we're not clear. We're never clear about what decisions are made were, how much they'll cost, and what was understood at the time. So my question is, are the administration willing to work with cross-party to ensure that everybody has a same understanding of what we're planning to do with the regeneration of the town centre, so we can all get behind it? Because at the moment that trust is broken, and I think it will damage the reputation of the council. It will damage the ability of us to make this a positive outcome if it doesn't have the trust and cross-party support of all parties. I'll probably come back with some other questions later if I may, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Let me answer some of those questions. You've had information almost as soon as it's been available. The progression to this point where the amount of information that is available has been relatively quick. You've asked for a business case regarding one element. Now, we can go backwards and forwards dealing with the business case for this and that and the other. It's a massive programme of well over 200 million. You cannot be going backwards and forwards doing that. What I can guarantee you of is the fact you will be informed virtually the same time as I am about what, at this stage, consultants are recommending. These are not yet decisions. They are recommending that we allow them to progress with the proposals, which will be rolled out in much more detail. You'll hear much more about it later in this meeting. And that is what we're currently dealing with. It isn't to say this is the final word. It is a significant step. But I keep reminding you, the reason I didn't believe for a moment I or any other or the Cabinet as a whole were sufficiently competent to actually do this themselves. They needed the benefit of skilled guidance, and you've got some of the best in the country And I'm prepared to be guided by them. And I think what you need to do is have a little faith and wait and listen. And believe me, the information will be rolled out to you as soon as possible. It is not as though you're being kept away from the reality of events. I think as you hear later, you will see what an amount of information suddenly is available. And the way this whole thing will progress is you will get to know things in, as it were, blocks of information. It'll come to you in a rather lumpy sort of way, inevitably so, if you are being guided partly by your own officers, but in turn guided by consultants who then need to liaise with us in order to achieve things. Now, I listened very carefully to what you said, Councillor Terry, and effectively, if you read into that in detail, you were effectively saying you should co-jointly perform the role of the Cabinet. Absolutely, you will not be allowed to do that. You are not the Cabinet. It's not your function to be the Cabinet. You will be informed as quickly as possible, with as much as possible, as soon as possible. I absolutely guarantee you that. But you're not going to determine the outcome of a scheme which predominantly has come from the Cabinet. Well, it's had approval of the Cabinet. And that's the way that all councils, well, virtually all these days, are run, except those limited number that are run by committees.
John, I think you wanted to come back, and then Joanne wants to come in as well.
Thank you, Chair. I'm asking questions because statements that have been made in the past have proved to be incorrect. I'm asking questions because the Cabinet reached an agreement with the Rugby League Curs to have a museum in the George Hotel and then reneged on that. So I have doubts about the trustworthiness of the information we are being provided with. You are asking us to take on trust that the costs associated with each of these individual elements have been thought through clearly, that there is a cost-benefit analysis for each of these elements, that this money is the wisest way to spend that money. And in the past, I have always been ready and willing to take that on trust. I'm afraid, after the debacle over the George Hotel, we are no longer prepared to do that. And this is the issue, this is the problem with trust. Because you have not been willing to be open, honest and transparent about what did go wrong, because something clearly went wrong, and we all know that mistakes are made on occasion. But if you're not willing to be open and transparent, that means people will not trust you when you do move forward on other issues and other matters. And this is a huge amount of money. We're borrowing huge sums of money at a time interest rates are rising, and we have no idea what the cost benefit is. And you expect us to believe you that you've thought all of this through. Yet when the one thing that has made some progress, which is the George Hotel, it's quite clear now that it was done on a hope and a prayer. And it wasn't clear what you were planning to do with the George Hotel when you bought it, other than bring it back into use. But anyone who's worked in any kind of programme where you make investments, you think through about the costs involved when you make that investment. It's quite clear that hasn't been done. And your unwillingness to share information means people will doubt you because you're not prepared to be open and transparent. Thank you.
Yeah, that the doubts are laid by the Conservative Party, who've played games with this on and on, all the way through this programme. They've expected fine details and so on. That's why we've employed consultants. I said from day one, there's nobody, either in the Cabinet or in the Council, competent to manage this whole programme. They're going to have to be guided, and we have been. Now, you don't have a dog and bite yourself. We are paying very expensively for consultants on every element of this. You're getting the benefit of their advice as we are, almost at the same time that we are. So you're not being not informed. We are getting information not in the form of constant day-to-day delivery of what is going on, but a regular update of what is happening. This is the most up-to-date. it's quickly in the public sector, it's quickly given to you, and the public will see more later on in this meeting. So there's no attempt whatsoever to hide anything other than a suggestion from the Conservative Party that there is some attempt to hoodwink the public or not fully inform them and so on. However, if we reduced everything to a programme, as you suggest, we would not progress. We would... I thought I was speaking. Was I not speaking?
Peter, finish your point and then...
Well, I'm sorry, I've lost my train because of the very rude interruptions that took place. I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Right, before I bring other members in, I'm just mindful, if you just turn your mic, sorry, it's just when two are on at the same time, it gets a bit awkward. I'm just aware of time, just say that Joanne's got to go out 1:45. I've got my numbers right. Also, I just want to remind all members, we're here for scrutiny. This isn't a party political process, so please, everybody, bear that in mind. We're here as critical friends. John, I think you want to come back on this point and then I'll move on.
I think I was going to make the point that you were just making. This is not the Conservative Party. This is all the opposition parties have been saying this. So the Liberals have been quoted in the press, the Greens have been quoted in the press. So don't try and make this a party political thing, Peter. This is the non-administration parties are saying they lack the trust in the process. I make the point again, you bought the George Hotel. At the time you bought the George Hotel, you told us it was going to be a 60-bed hotel with a museum in it. Now it's going to be a 90-bed hotel without a museum in it. That has significantly changed the costs. That is what we're saying. We don't believe you when you say you've thought all these costs through. Don't bring up the consultants. I've worked with consultants my entire career. I know exactly what value consultants bring in. They will help you with your vision about what you want to do. But at the end of the day, it's you as the administration that will make the decisions, not the consultants. They will guide you, but they will guide you based on what you ask them to guide you on.
Thank you. Joanne, did you want to come back? 'Cause you had your hand up a while ago. Apologies.
With permission, Chair, I think it might just help if I just explain something about the position we are at currently with, so David's going to draw to your attention where we are with the Gateway 2 and the business case process that we will go through, which will be very transparent to you as Scrutiny. In terms of things like the current work that's been done with the development partner for the George Hotel, I expect that to come back at some point because we're going to market to ask the market its views. We're not making a commitment at that point. There are further business cases and commercial work to go through, and that would need to flow through a cabinet and a scrutiny process at that point. So going forward, there is a significant amount of work to be done across the whole of the blueprint around those gateway points at which scrutiny can be applied.
Thank you, Joanne, and I just want to make clear again the points I've made before. We're not here to make political points. Please, everyone, just stick to that. We're here as critical friends to ask those questions. Right, Martin, I think you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. One or two things have been said, and I echo what has been said. We are here to scrutinise. The role is like a select committee in Parliament. The role is to ask questions, be a critical friend, and some of that may sometimes be robust. So it shouldn't be seen or interpreted as political, and it shouldn't be misinterpreted that this is only the Conservative Party. I think Robert will come back in and clarify that he has expressed concerns. And John, I'm glad you told us you were being grumpy. I wouldn't have guessed otherwise, but I'll be bashful and I'll leave it to the public to decide if anybody's dopey or sleepy here today. We've heard about consultants being appointed, but this is the cart before the horse. You bought a property. We read in the public domain that surveyors went in to do a structural survey and said they couldn't work throughout the building because they were concerned about the structural integrity of the building because of water ingress. Who buys a property without having a survey done on the property? You wouldn't get a mortgage if you were buying a house doing that. The public sector borrowing is obviously different. So that there's several elements. There's the business case for buying it, 1.8 million. You then come back, you'd have a different business case for transferring it to a hotel with museum. And that business case would then have to be refined for what we've got now. And we've been told it's a high quality hotel with 90 beds. The unit size of the beds is therefore being reduced from 60 to 90. So it seems like we're going for whatever they call these Z hotels, boutique hotels, or what's the other one, a hub by Premier Inn. So the business case for the hotel, and we haven't heard anything about this at the moment, is the price point that the hotel is going for. What is the market that this fantastic listed building, the centrepiece of Huddersfield, is going for? Because I had a quick look around, Chair, before we came. There's something like 1,000 beds in the Premier Inn, that kind of market. There's obviously other beds, and we're fortunate that we've had the Hollywood stars of Samuel L. Jackson coming into Kirklees, so we know that there are high price point hotels. So before you employ consultants, you do a business case and set out that this is the business that we're in, and what's the competition and what's the risk. We've heard, and it's mentioned, that we're employing a development manager, and I think Queensbury was mentioned, which I presume is a company, not the place. So what we're employing is a development management company. And again, we need to be clear on that we're not employing a person, we're employing another consultant or company. So again, that's to be looked at. Again, cart before the horse. If we look on page 18 of the report, the next stage of the work is a final design for the new hotel to present it to Cabinet in summer 2022, outlining preferred design costs and a preferred operator. Ahead of this, the concept will be marketed to the hotel sector from March to April. Well, surely Cabinet should set out what they want, the design of the hotel, and then you get somebody to come and bid and tell you if they're willing to work for it. Otherwise, we are being driven by not the consultants that we're employing, because as Peter says, you want that external support, but you're being driven by the commercial operator, who you should bring in as a partner early on if you're going to do that. The price of this, and we've seen lots of things bandied about, the leader has said this is a £20 million project. So where's that coming from? The 2.4 million of external grants, again, the business case would show if there was any risk attached to that. Was that given on the basis of bringing in the museum? Was that given on any other promise? Because, again, if I was looking to partner with this and the council had already reneged on one business deal, I'd be very cautious about signing up for anything when things can be turned round so quickly, and I have to say, so blasé. There's your museum in this iconic building where rugby league was born, and not rugby union as the mayor said. Oh no, we're going to move it to Woolworths or somewhere else. It's a totally different concept. It changes the whole ethos. The issue about connectivity has been quite rightly made. And the station to stadium corridor, we need to look at the connectivity there, because I know at one time there was some very far-fetched plans about having a funicular or a sky train or something. What's the connectivity between these points? The connectivity between the bus station and the railway station has had a lot of publicity, and a lot of it seemed to my mind, looking at the plans that were in the public domain for Dundas Street and Uphead Road, seemed to focus on a cycle lane. Well, I couldn't see those on the plans. On the plans that were released, a cycle lane was an unbroken green line running down towards, on Market Street towards the rail station. That unbroken green line was not evident on Dundas Street or Uphead Road. So, and as someone who occasionally cycles, if the concept is to improve cycling from the bus station to the railway station, how do you get a cycle on the bus in the first place to get to the bus station? It seems a bit strange. So connectivity, I think, as quite rightly said, is being we need to tease that out. But certainly I am still unconvinced that there is a sound business case for the purchase, renovation or commercial operation of the George Hotel. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And I've still got Yusra to bring in after this, so just be mindful of time. Who wants to
The
come back?
object, we wanted to give information. There are officers waiting to give that further information, which would help. But Martin, you seem much more concerned with telling us your opinion. Now, we can agree and disagree. I think the public are not particularly interested in you and I agreeing or any banter. I think the information that might be available will be of interest to this committee.
Sorry, Chair, just to correct that, we had the opportunity, the information should have been presented at the start of the meeting, then our comments would be based on it. If there is information, don't drip feed it, Peter, give it to us now.
Martin, the reason we're doing this is because of time, so we're bringing this, it'll come, just put, excuse me, it's coming, okay? Let's all calm down a little bit. Right, Joanne, go ahead.
In terms of the strategic acquisition of the George Hotel, which is a building that we as a council would want to have a say in the future of, and therefore controlling the asset itself was extremely important to Cabinet. The £2.4 million of HAS funding, or Heritage Action Zone funding, is unfettered in its use. It's around the building only. I think I would like to re-emphasise the point we're at in the business case for the George Hotel. We've not yet got to the business case of a hotel operator. Our development management company that we've put in place, they're in the business of understanding how we would go to market and work with the hotel market. So the expressions of interest that they will be doing over the next month, as identified in the report, sells us as a district to the hotel market as a vibrant and exciting place that they would want to place a premier hotel, one that's key and important to the town of Huddersfield and the wider Kirklees district, one that, being on the station to stadium gateway, will support some of the things that the university is wanting to do, as well as support visitors and tourists alike that are coming for very other reasons. That development management relationship helps us engage in a proper and professional management way with the hotel sector. We'll then get to a point in which we will understand which partners are interested in doing business commercially with us and which we're interested in doing business with from a commercial sense and from a what they offer for our town and the wider district sense. At that point, we would be looking to return with a business case through to Cabinet around what does that mean in terms of capital investment, ongoing revenue ask, and what does this say for us as an authority. So we're in no way committed at this point to put a hotel in there. What I would like to say, though, it is the hotel is much more than that particular building for this town. A lot of the things that we're doing in the blueprint require us to think about how people come to Huddersfield and stay in Huddersfield in order to make other pieces of this jigsaw work.
Thank you. Yusra?
I've probably got a more simpler question, I think. I think we focused on quite a lot of the numbers and crunching, and not to bring age into it because I'm not an ageist, but as a young person, I just want a simple sort of question to ask is, give me 3 positive things about this blueprint, because I've heard a lot of other conversations, but I'd like to know 3 positive things that would benefit the residents across the board, across the district. Thank you.
The building's an iconic one for Huddersfield. It's probably the most important building in the town. If it's not literally that, it's certainly amongst the most important. It was the place where the rugby league was founded, and we have attempted to try and bring the rugby league within. And the promises given at that stage about trying to work with were genuine. They were meant. It's ongoing factors as the workers continue to look at the building, that attitudes have had to change about what might not be possible. But the significance of the building, John sort of mentioned the fact, the key elements of this part of the town, the massive improvement that's going to be made on the station itself. This is going to be the main route. Well, it is the main route across the Pennines, but it's going to be upgraded, and the number of carriages is going to be increased, and the service is going to be quicker, etc. That will generate a massive amount of additional business. Now, if more business come into Huddersfield, and the first, as you walk out of the station, the first point of reference is this iconic hotel, which, if it's in place, which was upgraded and brought up to date, and believe me, it did need it, because I've been around the building, you know, when it was first bought, it was in a dreadful way. And as the consultants have moved in and looked at it, we've begun to realise just how much work needed to be done in order to bring it back into use. Not just a use as it was, but a use as it might be. So there's speculation there. So you need a guidance to know what exactly could it be, and could you get a hotel meaningful for the present century and would relate properly to the business that will accrue inevitably from the growth of the station business. So it's attempting to put that together, and in turn relating it to the other features that have been described, the development of the open market, which is going to be completely revamped, and I think it's 40 million the university had committed just down the road. It's a matter of 150 yards. That made a big nub of massive investment before we do what we're supposed to do with this building, which would be stupid to ignore. It's a critical building. So we rightly stepped in at an appropriate time and took advice about how to go about it most effectively and what might meet both the needs of that building and the needs of the market. Not an easy thing to decide. And initially to try and work in a museum. And the consultant said, well, you can't have all of those features together. Now, you don't engage your dog and bark yourself, you know? You listen, if you've got any sense, to what they're saying. And that's how we came to where we are.
Can you turn?
Sorry.
Thank you. I know, Joanne, Joanne, hang on, everybody. Joanne's got to go. We've still got 2 presentations and there's opportunities to ask questions later. Do you need to come in now or can you wait? You can wait, or you want to come in now?
No, come in now.
Okay, very quickly.
Yeah, just to respond to Peter, I have no doubt that you were genuine when you made the offer to the Rugby League Museum about taking the museum. And don't get me wrong, I don't doubt that. My questions are around whether you had done the right due diligence. So we've heard today about the fact that, you know, when you look, there was more work needed to the hotel than you anticipated. Again, as my colleague has already explained, that's the sort of thing you should have done before you took the decision to buy. My concern now is, great, we've got possibly the right consultants in place to guide us. I'm still not clear what sort of hotel we're going for, but park that for one moment. But what happens if the business case doesn't wash its face? So the council's left with, what are we left with? Are we therefore left in a position where the council is effectively subsidising the operation of a hotel indefinitely? Or do we scrap the idea to have a hotel and rethink again? And this is our area of concern. This is why we aren't letting this one drop, because this is about spending taxpayers' money, and this is about open-ended commitments. Now, there have been a number of very high-profile councils recently that have come unstuck where they speculated, bought property, and then found themselves with a bit of a problem and an open-ended commitment. And as we move forward through the journey around regenerating not just Huddersfield, but Dewsbury and the other centres, it's really, really important that we have the confidence that we are doing things in the right order, that we are not buying things because we feel like it's the right thing to do, without a sound understanding of the costs, the commitments, the risks, the opportunities that are associated with that. And this is why we will keep banging on about it, because I am concerned that, even Peter used the word speculation, I worry that the heart says we should take on the hotel, but the head hasn't been engaged about what that end state looks like and how we make sure that what we don't have is the council pouring money after money into, quite rightly, an iconic, great, listed building, but we hadn't done the homework first before we purchased it to make sure we understood the commitment, the risks and the opportunities involved. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, moving on now. That's it. We'll move on to, because we've still got 2 more presentations and, Joanne's got to go. Right, let's move on to David, and then we've got the architects and we've got opportunities for more questions after that. David.
Good afternoon. I will share. Sorry. Try and share this presentation with you. Okay, there we go. My name's David Glover. I'm the Senior Responsible Officer for the Cultural Heart, which is one part of the Huddersfield Blueprint. I've only got a few slides to take you through the report, and then I'll take questions, and then we have a presentation from the architects about the showing their stage 1 report, which I must emphasise is very early in the process of any development, but particularly the Cultural Heart, as there are many moving parts to it. We'll have Helen Roberts, who's a partner at the Architects, and George Wilson, an associate, to take us through that. If there are any questions that, when they're making their presentation, if there are any questions that don't particularly relate to the design work that they're showing you, I'll take those questions on their behalf. So, just by way of a reminder, the brief for the Cultural Heart, it's as in the blueprint, it refers to it as flagship project, key regeneration for the town centre, resetting the town, and embracing those key core values of family-friendly environment. The vision that was set out by the council is for a events venue, food hall, high-quality urban park, a new build library, museum and art gallery, improved connectivity and new car parks. And again, to be borne in mind, all are on an accelerated programme to ensure early delivery for the residents of Kirklees. So after some initial work, proposals were put to council to cabinet in June. Cabinet meeting 22nd of June, putting forward a way and proposals and strategy for how this project could be delivered, and particularly how an appropriate business plan and business case could be developed to put before cabinet. The proposals were based around following the Green Book methodology, it's a HM Treasury appraisal programme, And the first step would be creating the strategic outline case, referred to obviously as SOC. This will be Gateway 1, which was presented to Cabinet in November, as had been planned. I mean, you've got to bear in mind there's a huge amount of work going into this development, and to meet that targeted programme date was a significant milestone. So that was approved on the 16th of November. The second stage it will be the delivery of the business case, the business plan at Gateway 2 in July of this year. So all the effort that's going in at the moment is to develop and create that business plan for consideration by Cabinet. The outline business case will then allow Cabinet to determine the future direction of the project, whether at Gateway 2, whether they want to proceed or not, or want to consider modifications to the scheme, and it will ensure that the Council has the resources the resources are committed appropriately. And then should Cabinet approve the project at Gateway 2 to move forward, Cabinet will have the opportunity at future gateways to consider the progress of the project. So, you know, project scheme of this scale obviously needs the appropriate resource. Early work was done to determine what that help would need to be. It's a significant undertaking that's outside the normal resources of the Council, and so a team of external consultants has been engaged to assist in developing the business plan. It's you know, I'm pleased to say that the team that's been developed is of significance and quality and is world class. We have a strategic development partner who's doing the project management and procurement, architects Field and Clegg Bradley, who are sterling prize winners, and as engineers we have Arup, who are of international repute. To ensure that we've got the appropriate technical governance, we have formed technical and quality and a master plan groups and a finance group who will be able to provide those technical and financial checks along the way. And then, of course, in addition to this, we have the expected governance of the programme board and Regen policyholder boards. Progress to date has been significant. As I say, we got the approval from Cabinet in June to proceed with developing the business case. In July, we appointed the project managers, and then in turn, through their assistance in procurement, we appointed the architects and engineers. In November, we presented the strategic outline case, which assessed whether the Cabinet's, the Council's aspirations in principle could be achieved. Can you fit the buildings on the site? Is what would the anticipated budget be? What would be the relationship of the buildings to each other? And through that first phase of work, it was shown that would be possible. It comes with an outline, high-level budget of 210 million, and that's what Cabinet was asked to consider in November. Did they want the project to proceed further? And the answer was yes. We're now moving into obviously the second stage. In January, having appointed the architects in October, they had achieved their first stage of design in January, and that was subsequently approved in principle by L&T and so on. This is an outline design which is subject to change through further design modifications, and this is the presentation that you will be shown later. So it's very early in the process, but it is showing the direction of flow, and the architects will explain their thinking. In spring now, the service teams, those teams that will be the end users, the library, the museum, the gallery.
David, you need to move your slides on. Just checking with you.
Yep, sorry, I jumped one ahead. January to March, we're in the process, the service teams are in the process of reviewing their operational costs. And then it's just worth noting that Budget Council in February approved the multi-year capital plans increase for the Cultural Heart up to the £210 million allowance. Excuse me. So, in terms of ongoing work and looking forward, we, as I say, we've moved into the second stage of design with the RIBA Stage 2. Continue to work closely with the end users, the library and the museum, etc., whilst all the time checking against the £210 million budget. It's an iterative process. Ideas can be formulated, but we need to then continually check that they are affordable within the budget that we've set, and then at the same time comparing that to the programme delivery that we've established. We don't want to be developing ideas that we can't deliver to programme and can't deliver to budget. We're looking at third-party operators for the venue and other aspects of it, the food hall. We're also getting some help with the comms, because a project of this scale, as you can imagine, will have huge requirements in terms of stakeholder engagement and such like going forward. And planning is a big area for us. We've got 2 listed buildings. We hope to be able to do some interesting things to those buildings, but it will obviously mean negotiating forward with Historic England and others. And then 2 areas which I know are of importance, to the Cabinet and to Scrutiny, and of course to all of us, sustainability and social value. Sustainability, again, we're really at the very beginning of what we will be able to build into the buildings, but of course we're working on the basis of working towards net zero, so that we can be realistic about the achievements around sustainability. We actually have set some money aside in the budget specifically for this, so that the appropriate things can be built into the design. And then in terms of social value, again, relatively early days in terms of the overall context of the project, but I can confirm that the consultants that we're currently engaged in, are delivering in that area, and a little bit more on that later. If when we get to Gateway 2 in July, Cabinet is minded to approve the works that will then move on to, obviously, move into stage 3 of the design, but there'll be strip out and demolition of the buildings that are not to be utilised anymore. We need to be submitting the planning permission towards the end of this calendar year, and then procurement of the main contractors for the work, which the intention at the moment is that the contractors will be engaged towards the end of 2023 into 2024. And then, as I say, the service teams are currently working on operational costs and establishing their own budget. And then just a bit more on sustainability and social value. We've already developed a sustainable strategy, but then, as I said earlier, we need to determine how we incorporate that into the design and the buildings that we will be bringing forward, which is something that we're doing now. And as I've mentioned already, we have an allowance in the budget. In terms of social value, the current team, the design team, are doing social value activities. Again, these things, as with sustainability, it's important that we can measure the value that we are getting, and so we're using a tool called Social Value Portal, which records the consultants, and then the contractors in due course can input to Social Value Portal the activities they're doing, and the outputs can be measured. The council is currently reviewing its social value policy, and when we get to preparing the tender documents for the contractors and such like, we will be able to make sure that we can bake in to those tenders the asks of the council. And then, of course, with social value, it's important to remember, it's important for us to be successful in recognising that it's not just about the design phase and the construction period, but the legacy that we can create going forward. Thank you. So, I'll take questions.
I was just, David, I was just going to say, do we want to take the architects now? And then we could take the questions together, or would you prefer to do it this way?
No, I prefer
questions now.
I'll take questions about the report now, and then the architects' questions later.
Thank you. I've got Robert first, and then John.
Thank you, Chair. Time's a funny thing. I was there when this area was redeveloped the first time, and they pulled down a magnificent building, and also several very lively pubs as well. But that aside, I also worked for the Yorkshire Electricity Board, and it owned a large chunk of these premises. One of the things when that showroom and offices were in use was it was served underground from, is it Cross-Church Street at the underground? In the new development, now it didn't go all the way because Marks and Spencer's said they weren't going to be served underground, or refused to pay, otherwise they were leaving. Funny enough, they've left, haven't they? But will the underground be used more extensively, or even hopefully extended, so that the premises that are now that will use above ground, can be served underground, therefore enabling the streets to be clear of traffic? Because if you go at any time now, particularly in the morning, it's not a road, it's supposed to be pedestrian only, but there's an awful lot of traffic, delivery traffic, going through the shops. And I wonder if that's been taken into consideration at all.
Yes, it's being taken into consideration whether we retain the tunnels or had previously been considered demolishing them. But as you point out, there are a number of benefits to keeping them. We're not looking at or intending to extend them, but it is a question of retention or not, and we do recognise some of the benefits around keeping them. Yeah.
Can I just come back slightly? If you are going to retain the underground tunnels, so some of the shops or some of the areas will be could be served with them, but others won't. this piecemeal system of, yes, we're going to have vehicles delivered up to the top, and we're also going to have vehicles served underneath. Surely it would have been better, if at all possible, to serve them all underneath, so that enables pedestrians who are supposed to be able to enhance use of town. Again, we're talking about this connectivity of the system. We'll have a better, you can have a cafe culture up even above, where people can walk and stroll and do the retail shopping type of thing, all served without any traffic. Thank you.
The retention of the tunnels within the Cultural Heart project would mean that all the buildings within the Cultural Heart service could be serviced from the tunnels. Yeah. If they're retained, that will be possible.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David, for the presentation. I have a number of questions about different aspects. But the first one I'm going to ask is about the approach to the business case and the 210 million that's mentioned in terms of the costs. We're all very aware that there are inflation pressures at the moment, especially in construction, and with the ongoing situation that the Chair referred to at the beginning in the Ukraine, we could see those inflation figures rise further, or there'll be further difficulties. So, given that, what is the plan? Would it mean borrowing more or de-scoping aspects of the programme? That's my first question. If I may just add a couple more. This council talks all of the time about putting councillors at the heart of all we do. Yeah, I noticed in this report we haven't even consulted the ward members who are, the elected representatives of the area that we're talking about doing this to. But I would go far further than that and say the vast majority of us as elected representatives have an interest and an involvement, as do the people we represent, in the future of Huddersfield Town Centre. So where are councillors in this? Because I've read this report. There's talk about stakeholders, there's talk about engagement, there's talk about different groups that are going to be consulted, but there's no mention of councillors. So it doesn't feel as though councillors are at the heart of this in any shape or form at the moment. And I'm hoping you'll be able to address that. And if perhaps I can suggest, Chair, that one of our recommendations should be that there is better engagement with elected members in regard of this. Because if we are going and talking to other stakeholders, why are we excluding councillors? And then my third question, and quite frankly, I just don't understand what it means. Under 1.5 New Street, there is a sentence that says, work to date has concentrated on investigating statutory undertaker apparatus and sellers in the area. What on earth is statutory undertaker apparatus? I'm sorry, I'm just baffled by the wording. There are a couple of typos. I normally, for your information, David, I have a reputation for proofreading and picking up typos, and there are a number of typos in this. But I think at the moment I'll leave it at that. So there's three. There's one question I just don't understand the words, and then the other one's about the impact of ongoing inflation pressures on the potential business case. Would we de-scope or would you borrow more? And then thirdly, where are councillors in all of this? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, so I've jotted those questions down, and maybe if I take the third one first. I'm here to represent the Cultural Heart, which is the area bounded by King Street, Queen Street, and Street to the west. But I can't, in terms of New Street, statutory undertakers are electricity companies, water companies, and so on. So, fortunately, my technical background helps me answer that question. In terms of inflation, it's one of the risks that we have with the project. You know, obviously we're at the very beginning of the process. Risks associated with design, construction, the selection of the appropriate contractors, and inflation. The whole aspect of the process of project management is about working and considering these things all the time. And so, in terms of having already considered, you know, the 210 million is a very high level figure. But having strategized and thought about the best way forward, we have incorporated an allowance for inflation over the lifetime of the project, to anticipate and deal with this. So it's built into an allowance is built into the 210. Which if inflation wasn't to happen, wouldn't be utilised, but of course inflation, there's going to be inflation will potentially flow through to the numbers.
Thank you, David. You haven't answered the third question.
No, the second. In terms of the councillors, I mean, in terms of where the project is up to. We've needed to get to a position where there's enough to talk about and present for input and comment. The stakeholders that we've engaged with in detail so far are the service teams, the end users, the library service, the museum service, and the galleries. We are at the stage now where we're able to properly engage with others.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David. I think you'll find that councillors are end users, and I would say that they would have a very strong view on how we developed our museums and our libraries, not just the officers who work for council. So I would say that you are missing something if you're treating councillors differently. At the end of the day, we're the elected representatives to bring forward the policies and proposals which the council will then implement. So the staff who work for the museum and the library absolutely have a role to play, but so do councillors, and I think it's remiss if we're saying we're engaging with one part of the council but not the other. So I'd ask you to perhaps take that away and perhaps give some consideration to that. And in terms of the business case, and I recall last time this came, I think it was to Scrutiny, but I sat on a number of committees, I'm not sure which one it came to be honest. We did talk about the risks involved and the provision that was in the budget for inflationary pressures, but that was based on the understanding of the likelihood of inflationary pressures at that point in time before everything kicked off in Ukraine. So I'm just wondering how frequently that is revisited, and obviously we'll have it on a risk register, but what are the mitigating actions that are in place? Because I still come back to, would it mean borrowing more or de-scoping? Because I suspect that the amount that is in there for inflationary pressures, if inflation continues to rise in the way it is, that was not anticipated 6 months ago even. So it's unlikely to have been incorporated in the numbers that were originally brought through. And I'm just wondering, how frequently is that refreshed, and when was it last looked at? Thank you.
The inflation figures that have been incorporated are from the BCIS, British Council in Service, a part of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. It's the figures are used by BIS. So they're internationally recognised as being the best available data, and it's a judgment. We're predicting 4 and 5 years forward, but they are the best figures that are available to us. The budgets, the cost plan is reviewed on a monthly basis.
Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm just mindful of time as well. We've still got the architects to come. So we've got Martin, and then I don't know if you want to come in as well. Yeah, you do. Okay, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah. Just looking at this, page 20, paragraph 1.11 sets out the vision, the cabinet vision for the cultural heart, which is clearly as an events, destination and tourism, which therefore demands that there's going to be a large amount of footfall there. So in terms of sustainability and the Council's commitment to the climate emergency, carbon reduction, what plans are being fed at a very early stage to reduce necessity for cars and things for people to get to these events? Because otherwise, yeah, your sustainability figures will be all over the place. The presentations showed sustainability, and I presume that includes renewables, sort of down the list. I mean, those would seem to be things that you specify up front. You know, things like rainwater reusal, things like that, and renewables on roof spaces. Nothing that I'm seeing at the moment as well is something which will be of key importance to people outside Huddersfield Centre. The creation of this destination, museum, etc. will close or displace other council facilities such as the Tolson Museum, probably Crowness Park, yeah, anywhere where we have something, they will be rationalised. So what is the future plan and use for the Tolson Museum, Ravensholt Park and all the other assets? Because the last thing we want is to be mothballing buildings because they then become liabilities like the George Hotel. The other thing from a scrutiny point of view, Chair, is if we look at page 22, we considered this on the 7th of September, so 6 months ago, and made a number of comments and suggestions. A lot of these are still reported in this as being noted. 6 months down the line, I'd like to see some answers and updates. When Scrutiny take the time to make suggestions to help shape projects, you know, just to say that the panel noted the consideration should be given to the issue of surface water in the early design phases. Noted. That should have come back now and said, yes, you're right. Not only did we note it, we've taken it on board and these are the changes that are being made. The town centre is built and marketed in a way that encourages visitors to surrounding towns and villages, because again, this is something that we as councillors not from Huddersfield want to make sure that Huddersfield is not sucking the lifeblood out of all the other towns and villages around Kirklees. That's only noted. Where is the impact study about what Huddersfield as a destination will be on other areas such as Dewsbury, Batley, Cleckheaton, where I think, and Holmfirth, where we heard, was it a £10 million investment from the council in town centre regeneration? We need to be looking at that. So to see so many things which our comments and questions, and key there again, I would suggest when negotiating with partners, the panel suggested that engagement be undertaken with local groups such as the Street Angels, the Visual Impairment Network, guide dog associations, and we have presumably engaged with Canal Rivers Trust. Noted. Again, key stakeholders, we talk about that, there should be something in there that said, yes, accessibility and connectivity, which Robert mentioned on the previous thing. If you're designing things, you're designing it for all access people and making sure that equality of access to this destination space is for those who may have impairments. So, yeah, can we have that? Make sure that in future, when we get reports back, our comments 6 months down are not noted, but are actioned.
Thank you, Martin. I mean, just to, you know, I think you're right on the noted ones. Just to say there are updates as well as noted on there. Just, you know, just to make sure we're getting that across. But I think that's a fair point. David, do you want to come back?
Yeah. Sure. The note. I mean, I note your comments about the noted. And that's in all seriousness, and it was just a placeholder to say, yes, we recognise the request, the statement that's been made, but we're not yet at that stage in the development of the project to respond properly. So I think I've been respectful of your position in the knowledge that it's a long process of design and the answers don't yet exist. In terms of some of the other points about the sustainability and renewables and such like, again, we're in a similar situation where those aspects will flow through the consideration of the design. And when we get to the architect's presentation, that will give you a better understanding of where we are in our development of the project. But again, there's so many things going on in the background to make sure that we come forward with the best foot forward in the most professional way possible. So for example, the start of engaging wider with stakeholders. There was engagement yesterday with Inclusivity and Diversity Group. So beginning to build up the momentum of engaging and sharing, sharing our thoughts, as indeed we are today.
Thank you, Yusra, and then we'll bring in the architects.
I think Councillor Taylor's covered my 2 points. Once is about the councillors being at the heart of decision making. I think that needs to be somewhere in there. And the other about inflation as well. That's something that we might have not considered 6 months ago. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. And if you could look at that, really.
Thank you. I think you've.
Yeah, I don't know if you want me. Yes, no. I'll take them on board. I don't know if you need a formal response.
I think you kind of answered it anyway, that, things are being noted. So at some point when it's the right time, you will approach us as stakeholders. So I do take your point that you did kind of answer that at the end.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yusra. Right, can we bring the architects? We've got Helen and George, and, very, very much thankful for them to come along and share the slides. So over to Helen and George.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay in the chamber just there?
We certainly can. Thanks, Helen.
Great. So, David, thanks for the reports and the background. Just before I make the presentation, I'll introduce myself and George. So I'm a partner. My name's Helen Roberts. I'm a partner at Field and Clegg Bradley Studios. And as David has described, we were appointed through a sort of public competitive process towards the end of last year as architects and master planners for this project. And George, whose camera has just gone off, but I'm sure he can pop it back on again for a minute. Thank you, George. George is an associate. We're both working full time on this project with a much bigger team of architects behind us. And the work that we're going to show you this afternoon is the culmination and the endeavours of a much bigger team. So cost managers, access consultants, sustainability experts, structural engineers, landscape designers, and so on. So we are, our work is the embodiment of the whole team's effort, and it represents where we are to date. And as David has explained, it's a long and very structured process. We're following a sort of industry standard set of processes and milestones. And so the work which we have just finished is called RIBA Stage 1, which is called Feasibility and Briefing. And it is exactly that. So the designs that we're showing, some of which has now been put into the public domain as well, is very much the outline. It's the preliminary work, and there's a lot of work to do to build the project up to a level where it's ready to be submitted for a planning application. And so the work that we're doing just now, which we're doing in parallel with the outline business case work, that is called RIBA Stage 2, and that is termed as concept design. So we're going to share with you a report very similar to one that was given to LMT and the other panel, the name of which I can't remember, and hope that all makes sense. May I just check, Chair, given that it's 2:25, how long would you like to be left for questions at the end? We've got a lot of slides, but we can make this as short as necessary.
Thank you, Helen. I don't know if you can do it in sort of 10-15 minutes, and then we've got opportunities for questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll do it in 10 or 15 minutes. I will whiz through it. George knows a lot more on some of the more detailed aspects of what we've done, so he will be able to help with questions at the end. So I'll share my screen now, and if somebody could just let me know that that you can see my screen, that would be great.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is the just a quick contents of what I'm going to talk through this afternoon, a summary of what we've done to date, the brief we've been asked to work to, the evolution of the strategic outline case scheme that was summarised to the Cabinet report, which David has referred to, the proposals to the public realm, the new museum and gallery, the new library, venue and parking, and illustrative street views. Most of what I'm going to show is visuals. This is one of the few pages of text, so bear with me. But just to confirm that this is what we've done today. We've reviewed the scheme that was summarised in the Cabinet report back in November. We've had detailed discussions with stakeholders, as has been just discussed. That means in this context, those people responsible for the library, the museum and art gallery provision in the town, highways, major projects, parks and open spaces. We've developed a detailed schedule of accommodation for each element of the brief. We've produced what are called assessments of significance for the two listed buildings, which are part of the Cultural Heart site, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail. Those are required as part of an approvals process that we need to go through with Historic England in order to get permission for making alterations to the building. And we've also met with Huddersfield Civic Society. We've done an impact analysis to determine the required capacity for car parking on the site, and we've liaised with specialists in the location and the technical needs of a new 2,200 capacity venue, which we've been asked to include. We've produced a variety of options for the location of each element, and we've then begun to draw conclusions on the principles and layout of those on the master plan. And I won't dwell on this at all, given the time that we now have, but these are the overall square metre areas that we've been asked to design to for each of those elements. So you're no doubt all familiar with this, but just to orientate you, because a number of our slides are drawn from this same sort of aerial view, we're looking down on the red outline is the whole of the site, which is deemed to be the Cultural Heart project. And you can see the identified buildings, number one being the Queensgate Market Hall, occupying the largest area of the site. And of course, that's the result of works that took place between 1969 and 1974 over 4 phases. The Market Hall itself is the only, is sort of the most significant listed part of that whole complex. Number 2 is the existing library and art gallery, which is also a grade 2 listed building. Number 3, you have the single story development around the piazza, fronting on then to King Street to the north. Number 4 is currently a vacant site where, of course, there was a multi-storey car park. And 5, 6 and 7, so the Town Hall, Lawrence Batley Theatre and St Paul's Hall, respectively, are other buildings of historic significance around the boundaries of the site. And all of the sites, sort of this aspect, is part of the Huddersfield Town Centre conservation area. So we have to be very mindful of that. So one of the first things we were asked to do was to sort of analyse and assess some of the earlier work that had been done as part of the strategic outline case. This work was done by others before we were appointed, and it looked at the position of a potential new venue in this context and the disposition of the other pieces, if you like, around that. And our thoughts on this were really that the venue felt as though it was sort of clogging up a space which really ought to be opened up to the public to create a more significant open space at the heart of the scheme, and that the library and the art gallery, which are important principal public functions in the town and which we're hoping to to increase footfall to again, were really in quite inferior positions, and they were also difficult things to incorporate into that listed building. And then that we have to be mindful of the mass and the imposition that new structures have on the setting of listed buildings. So as part of our bid to you in order to win this job, we put down our very first thoughts about creating a substantial park in the town centre, how buildings might relate to that town park, how the market could be renovated, how the library could be extended, and how we could really think about perhaps undoing some of the damage that had been done by the 1970s development, thinking about the continuation of Ramsden Street, thinking about the quality and the inhospitability of Queen Street, and thinking about the connection to the university, and then tying in the rest of this site to the rest of the town. So this slide, it's very sort of pictorial, but hopefully you get a sense from this that the scheme is all about landscape connecting the cultural assets, and these are, the cultural assets of your town. And we think that the one of the main parts of the project is to really reveal those cultural assets and make the public more aware of them, make better use of the buildings so that they have a greater longevity. So we've now slightly reorientated. You can see King Street is running up and down the page over here on the right where I'm pointing to. The town hall is here, the university is down at the bottom. And this is our kind of diagram of our proposals as they stand at the moment, where you can see this is the existing library and art gallery building, where it is proposed that an extension is built to the north. The market space would become an indoor food hall with a library acting as an extension to that building, and thus creating a new external event space, a sort of civic square for the town, which then opens up to the town hall. Labelled as other use on this drawing, but we're now working on the basis that this would be a new art gallery space. We know that Huddersfield has such an important collection of paintings that most of them have to be kept off-site in storage because there simply isn't the capacity in the existing building to show them. And of course, there are some serious maintenance issues with the existing library at the moment. So there's no artwork on display, as you'll be aware. And the live music venue would go to the south on the former car park site with a car park next to it. And all of the cultural uses would be sort of glued together and in the setting of a new park. The tunnels have been mentioned, and indeed we've done a lot of investigative work to see how the tunnels impact on the proposals. And for the time being, we are assuming that they would be kept, although there could well be some modifications in some areas. So three-dimensionally then, and some of you may have seen this image before, we're now back to that original sort of elevated viewpoint. You can see hopefully the intention of creating this key public square here, which opens up the side of the town hall to the other cultural uses in the town centre. And the idea then that connections and fluidity through extending Ramsden Street, which is currently blocked and has that really inhospitable stair that sort of pokes through the listed facade of the market. This would become a much more generous threshold or gateway connecting town and university, albeit across the ring road, but opening up then a view to St Paul's Hall and creating onto Queen Street a much more sort of person-friendly atmosphere and an active frontage along this side. The other thing that then does is create better connection and accessibility to Lawrence Batley Theatre. So this was the brief for the park, that the park would provide a major destination space to act as the connector, the enabler and the facilitator of a new vibrant outdoor cultural life for the town. And I suppose the main thing to say is that there's a real sort of paucity of good quality outdoor spaces and certainly no green space in the town centre. And so we're working with Reform, a local landscape architect whose brief has been summarised here in these precedent images, providing an inviting and welcoming place which is open all day and all year round, providing a place which can promote and facilitate cultural activities, providing a place which in terms of nature is biodiverse and resilient and healthy, and providing a space which is a destination in itself and is a space for all. So everyone is welcome, regardless of physical abilities and so on, or age or any of those other issues. And in terms of the strategic opportunities, then they're talking about this being a place in itself, sort of redefining this part of the town, giving it some real character, looking critically at connections, so connections across the space, connections to key buildings, and connections beyond this piece of town, which is, you know, is somewhat barricaded in by the ring road and by the infrastructure of the 1970s work. And what the sort of nice metaphor that they've used for the landscape is thinking about it as being 4 rooms. That's not to say that they are segregated and there are divisions between them. It's more thinking that there could be 4 spaces, each with different character. So a green space fronting King Street, an idea about a museum or a culture garden in between the 2 cultural buildings. And as I've talked about, this sort of urban piazza, sort of hard outdoor space in front of the food court. I'm going to skip over this one because I want to make sure there's enough time for you to ask questions. That just reinforces some of the ideas in the landscape I've just summarised. And some more precedents here, which they've used to sort of start thinking about and start sharing their ideas. I think these images are helpful. What they've taken here are some local precedents to give you a sense of the scale of the outdoor space. So the first one on the left that I'm just pointing to is City Park in Bradford. So the dotted red line overlaid is the scale of that space. Overlaid on your site, you see that, you know, we've got a really substantial area to provide here, which is a great opportunity. Next to it is the Playhouse Gardens in Leeds, which is a different kind of space and is terraced, and a lot of it is softer. But again, you see that within the context, you get a sense of the scale of what we're doing. And then the final one is the Peace Hall in Halifax, which again, dotted over here, you can see that the outdoor performance space, which is the red box that we're showing there, is comparable. It's probably about sort of 2/3 to half the size. I'm just going to talk briefly now about each of the proposed building plot uses on the cultural heart. The first one is for the new library and food hall, and so the existing market hall, as you'll know, is grade 2 listed. It's primarily listed because of the sort of really incredible dramatic single volume space that's underneath these hyperbolic paraboloid concrete roof panels, which are the thing which give it great significance historically. It also includes some highly specialist listed artworks. Everything about this building is listed, has equal status. That's both within the building and then indeed this ceramic frieze which runs along the ring road, which you'll all be familiar with. But of course the building is pretty inhospitable in certain places. This is the street elevation on Peel Street. That's how it presents itself to the town hall, and really very little of the splendour of it can be appreciated. So our intention here, this is an aerial view. If you're with me on the top left, we're looking down towards this sort of pinky brown colour is Dorothy Perkins, and our intention here is to remove this piece of this building element in what we're calling peel and reveal. So we remove this piece in order to reveal and create the possibility for an outdoor performance area, it's a town park sitting in that location, which allows us to really see more of the existing structure. And then inserted into that at the street level would be the food hall underneath this sort of, you know, really voluminous and impressive roof structure, with the library, which would be relocated from its existing building, partly within that structure and partly as a substantial new extension, sort of creating a bookend to that space. And now looking at how that would feel externally. So this view again is from Peel Street, looking towards what's currently the indoor market. And again, you get this quite blank, inhospitable facade. So once we have taken down the piece which is Dorothy Perkins on that corner, you get the sense of creating the space. And then once we take the facade line back to the original columns, which I'm just pointing to here, you then really get a sense of the existing building and create that sort of threshold into what would be a food court with the library, this piece here, and a pedestrianised square in front of it. The museum and gallery then. The museum would occupy the existing library. This again is a Grade 2 listed building, but of very different character, listed for very different reasons. Sort of handsome but austere sandstone building. And the intention is that the building will be reused as a museum with an extension to the north. At this point, we were considering how an extension to the east might work. That's less likely to happen. And the art gallery provision for the town would go into a new building in this location, hence sort of giving meaning to what we talked about as being sort of culture garden, a space that would sit between those two buildings. And sitting between then the library and the art gallery is a series of sort of cascading steps, a new way down to connect the town with the university, housed either in this piece of the block or indeed within the art side of the development would be a publicly accessible lift, so that anyone with accessibility needs, or indeed people with prams, can easily get up and down here. And we've talked about the tunnels. At the moment, there is a tunnel access here, which could be retained in this development. The access here would go, and there's one here, which for the time being, we're presuming would be retained, because they do therefore allow buildings to be serviced easily without impeding or destroying the sort of family-friendly and safe character which this existing plateau that was created in the 1970s has provided. We looked at some precedents of how additions can be made to existing buildings. These are of quite a different scale, but they're helpful in thinking about how an existing building can be sort of reimagined, and that's part of our work. And we also referred to one of our practices buildings at the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, an art gallery, a long barn-like building which has a public space next to it. Obviously, the wider context is quite different. This is extremely leafy and a parkland setting, but it's still an interesting way of thinking about displaying art. And then finally, there are some views which hopefully now I've given you a clear sense of orientation. This is looking then from St. Paul's across the ring road and up these cascading steps. The lift would be either here or just over here. You then really reinforce the previous line of Ramsden Street. You can now see what would be the new museum. There's a visual connection once you're around the corner with the town hall, and you see then that Queen Street is opened up. Quickly, the venue and the car park. This occupies the southern part of the site. This shot was taken before the site was completely cleared. It's quite complicated. There's a significant change in level from Princess Street down to the ring road, and it's obviously got some challenges, but that's fine. Every project has challenges, and our task here is to accommodate the live music venue for 2,200 visitors and the car park. We've done various studies so far of how that can be accommodated given the constraints of the site, and work is carrying on to do that, which is going well. Various configurations of parking and the venue next to each other. And again, we're trying to knit the historic fabric and the frontages of these buildings into the town centre in a really positive way, so that the navigating them feels safe and easy and accessible. And so now looking sort of on the corner of Peel Street and Princess Street, the entrance to the venue could be in that position there. We're also hoping there could be an easy connection between the food court and the venue, so that there's a synergy between the uses, and that this has a sort of a lively and safe nighttime activity as well. I think I'm nearly at the end. These images are some which I think are now in the public domain. This one showing how we're considering Queen Street might work, so that in removing that really heavy infrastructure and the blank facade that the back of the piazza gives to Queen Street, this could be opened up and an invitation, if you like, into the public park. The new extension to the existing library building there on the right, with the art gallery to the left. And then this is a view further along Queen Street, if you had the Lawrence Batley Theatre behind you. So again, you're opening up views through the town. And I've referred to this junction of Queen Street and Queen's Gate, looking through towards the town, eventually towards St. Peter's Church. And I think finally, this street view is looking down Ramsden Street, and then, as I've said, this allows then a good visual and physical connection to the university. The steps that I described would be at the end of this view here, with the library on the right. So further steps, I think, have been described in David's presentation, so I won't go through those. That brings me to the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen. I don't know if you want to take the presentation down now, but
yeah, that's fine. I can do, or I can leave something up if that would be helpful.
Perfect, just so we can see you as well. That's great. Well, I mean, as I'm going to speak here more as a resident of Huddersfield. For me, I really welcome the plans. They look really, really exciting, and I think as a councillor of Huddersfield, as one of the councillors, not the councillor of Huddersfield, I know we get a number of, right now I think there's a number of residents who, aren't happy with the town centre. I think that's clear. There are issues with town centres across the country, and for me, this is transformational. It's very, very exciting. I think the important things for me is, having looked at the plans, is the accessibility. I can see you're building some of that in now with the lifts and stuff, but I think it's so important for people with mobility issues, or, like you say, mums with prams and things like that, mums and dads with prams, that's built in early on. The sustainability is going to be key, and I'd like to see that sort of built in early on. And you mentioned there, Helen, also about safety. It's great to see the park in there, and I think, but as a council, as soon as you see these sort of big open spaces, one of the first things you think about straight away is sort of antisocial behaviour and safety. So I'm sure that's something that you're considering early on, but I think that's crucial as well. But for me, I've got to say, looking at it, I was pretty much wowed by those plans, and I'm excited as a user of the town centre to see something like this in a few years' times. So I'm going to bring members in. I think John had his hand up first. So go ahead, John.
Firstly, Helen, thank you very much for the presentation. Yeah, I echo the comments that have already been made about, yes, this looks good, this is transformational, and it's exciting, and it is what is needed. We've had discussions earlier on in this meeting about costs and things where we maybe not be agreeing, but in terms of wanting to do something positive and see a positive outcome, I think probably you'll find that everybody's pretty much in the same space on it. A couple of comments from me. I agree with Harpit's comment about the park and how we make the park feel safe, because I know that's a common problem with a lot of our town centres, not just here in Kirklees, but more generally. Part of that is about having adequate footfall, isn't it? So the evening economy particularly is important, because the more people that are around, the safer people will feel. But lighting has a role to play in that as well. So I'm hoping that we're picking that up, Helen, and thinking about, even in the park space, how we can make sure that it is suitably illuminated, so that people will feel safe walking through that area, sort of, in the evenings or dusk or whatever it may be. But what you don't want is huge, sort of football stadium lights there or anything, but something suitable. And I'm sure you've got the experience, to be honest, to come up with something like that. My worry when you put up the slide about the urban park, and you're showing the examples of Peace Hall and I can't remember the other two. One was Wakefield, wasn't it? But anyway, I worry, and then the last time this came to Scrutiny, I spoke about my concerns about what happened in Manchester, where Piccadilly Gardens were changed to support the Commonwealth Games, and it went from being a nice sunken garden with lots of flower beds to being a concrete open space, and it's still a concrete open space broadly today. So I want it to be quite green. I want to see lots of trees and flower beds, but if we are having flower beds, they need to be maintained flower beds, and not ones that are neglected and become places where litter gathers. So there is a maintenance cost associated with that, but I would want to see that. If you think about in Kirklees parks that people like and respect, like Greenhead Park, you know, the older Victorian parks, civic parks, they are well designed and thought out, and there is a lot of, you know, there is open space, but there are features within that open space. And my worry is sometimes the desire to have an exhibition space or an open space leads it to being very bland and flat, and I'm hoping we avoid that. And then just a personal thing, you can ignore me if you want, Ellen, but I hate the idea of having a big modern extension on the library building. I'm a traditionalist in terms of architecture. I'd much rather see something that was sympathetic and echoed the existing building rather than a big glass square cube type thing. I know that's quite trendy, and I know, you know, even the Louvre in Paris has got its triangle and things, but I personally hate them. But again, that's just a personal view. But thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, John, and I like them. So, as you can see, there's different opinions. Helen and George, I don't know if you want to say anything at this stage on some of the technical design stuff that's been raised.
That's fine if that would be helpful. George, do you want to come in since you've not had opportunity to speak yet, or would you like me to?
Yeah, I'll take my chance. Thank you very
Good.
much. Hello, everyone. As two people have already introduced me, I'm George Wilson, Associate of Field and Clay Bradley, working with Helen. I think I'll pick up on a couple of bits, maybe around safety and the public realm, possibly. I think, you know, Helen's already touched on it in terms of making sure that it's welcoming, family-friendly, usable to all, but also that it is a series of outdoor rooms that can be used throughout the day. You know, we talked about 24 hours, 365 days a year, and key to that is going to be the way that the space is lit, as you've already pointed out. It'll also be key that the buildings that surround and enclose that park have a very positive relationship with that space and have the ability to passively survey it and provide activity close to those edges. We're also working with Reform, the landscape architect, on the designs of the spaces within the spaces and ensuring that we don't create areas where people can congregate and almost create antisocial kind of refuges within that, and making sure that things within it are spread out across it to lessen that impact. I think in terms of green and hard and the flexibility of the space and trying to provide areas for people to congregate, but also to provide those green spaces. Part of the concept of the rooms is around having defined areas where you're not trying to have competing activities happening at the same time. So of course, if you're trying to have an event for, let's say, 1,000 people or 2,000 people on a green area, that's going to be very difficult and lead to lots of maintenance issues. So part of the rationale behind that large civic space is that it can be harder, it can be used to accommodate those types of events whilst sitting next to much greener areas. Of course, the challenge there is, and as you pointed out, making sure that that doesn't become something that feels barren and empty when it's not used for those events. So we're working with our landscape team to create something that can be adaptable, still allow those events to happen, not have structures and features that get in the sightlines for those events, but doesn't leave it for the days, which, you know, may well be the majority of days when those things aren't happening, but it doesn't have the empty atmosphere that you suggested.
Thank you, George. That's really helpful. Helen, did you want to say anything else at this stage?
No, I think George's answers cover anything that that we would hope to explain. And just in terms of the extension actually to the museum, I mean, thank you for expressing your opinion. And you know, we really haven't designed it yet. So although in some of this imagery it might appear as though it's sort of depicted as a big glassy box, it may or may not be. We're at that point in the process where we're sort of representing, if you like, the idea of there being an extension in that location, and what that looks like yet we haven't pursued. You know, more information I'm sure will be presented as we move through this process.
Thanks, Helen. And some people like glass boxes, so you know it's all right with me. Yes. So we're going to bring in Martin and then Yusra, and then we'll start sort of winding up. Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I'm mixed about glass boxes. I can see the concerns about adding them to listed buildings, even though the library was the comments of a former leader, and if you're watching David Shade, I won't repeat them in a public space about what he thought of that library building, but as somebody who used to clean windows, I can see that the glass buildings have a place in society, keep people very busy. So yeah, I look forward to that. The prospect of having a town centre event space is exciting, because I used to be an events manager for a company, and we delivered events in all the West Yorkshire authorities. Millennium Square in Leeds, Bradford outside the City Hall, and when we came to Huddersfield, we had to go up to Greenhead because there wasn't the space in the town centre. So having somewhere where there is footfall is interesting, but it's a challenge. And the issue about safety has been touched on, because the Bradford one, we had to put barriers. We were delivering cycle events, predominantly for children and people, but we had to put barriers and have a gateway to stop the antisocial element getting in and disrupting, because it became, this city centre park during the daytime became, unfortunately, an attraction. So George has mentioned not creating antisocial refuges, and that's something you can create by design and speak to the police. Lots of talk about steps and lifts, but I haven't seen anything in this about the active travel accessibility, getting across the ringway using active travel modes. And they exist at the moment, and they need to be factored in, retained and enhanced. The other point, we developing this event area, and obviously Peace Hall was used as a comparator. That's had a lot of success lately, and they've engaged a very high-profile event organisation company to partner them. What's the market that we're aiming for? As an indicator, what kind of acts are we going to see here? Because again, that comes back to the point that I made before about sustainable travel, doesn't it? It's very, very interesting. The outdoor event space as well in the town centre, again, reflecting on Millennium Square at Leeds. That's got like an undercroft, so that equipment for the bands and things, the networks are all accessible, and you can work with them during a performance. If everything, because St George's Square was going to be a performance square at one time, but that was ruled out, strangely enough, when it came into being. The natural slope of St George's Square would have lent itself for outdoor events. You used to have Christmas fairs and things like that, but strangely enough that went. So it's looking at the designing in, and again, I know Joanne's had to go, but she has very fond memories of the Leeds St Valentine's Fair, which is on the hedgerow in the town centre. So if we've got attractions, it's making sure that the design is in from day one, that we don't build something and go, oh, sorry, we can't do that. It's very exciting. I think we're looking forward to seeing this develop. So safety, market and accessibility. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll just bring in Yusra, and then we can sort of sum up the points. Yusra.
Well, Martin, you've summarised that very well. Thank you for the report. It's very, very exciting. It's very refreshing. I love the idea that you can almost flow through it, but they have their own identity. I love the idea that it's an event space as well as a place to come and spend time and go into cafe areas and access different facilities. So I'm not going to repeat myself because I agree with what John and what Martin has said. I also am even though I'm in the younger age bracket, I do like traditional buildings, and I think so. I think it's a balance between the two. There's a fine line between that. I don't mind the other idea of having a glass extension, but it'd be nice to have an in-between idea as well, where it can retain some of the features as well. But I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think John just wants to bring in a quick point, and then we'll...
Yeah, just one final comment. When we did the place standard work on the consultation on the blueprint, one of the places I went was the visually impaired network. And I think that's just something we need to, not had anything mentioned about really, but we need to be thinking about if those who are visually impaired sometimes find steps and things like that quite a challenge. So just flag that one up now, early doors, just so we can make sure that we're thinking about that as we go through those design phases, because they do find parts of the town centre currently very difficult. Thank you.
Thanks, Now, very, very good point. Helen, George, I don't know if you want to come back on some of the points. I think some of the new points there were about visual impairment users, residents. We had something about active travel. I don't know if that's part of the plans that you were sort of building in, or if that's going to be for David. Was there something about the venue, the music venue, Martin? Did you ask something about that was the market, wasn't it, which might be for David?
The market, and they're also building in the accessibility so that if you need to get speakers and things like that underneath, those things are considered now, and not having them to add later.
Okay, is that all right, Helen and George? I don't know if you want to come back on some of those points, and I'll ask David on the others.
Shall I start?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got some notes.
It's hard when you're not in the same room. Sorry. I think on the visually impaired, I guess the thing that I would say is, I mean, there's all sorts of inclusion and diversity factors that we need to build into our brief and our design response. We're working with a local architect who's specifically engaged as part of our team in our to offer access and inclusivity advice. So we have regular meetings with her, and we have design reviews of our project. We met with the Inclusion and Diversity Hub yesterday, and a number of these topics came up. We're in this early RIBA stage 2 process, as Helen has identified, and as we start to crystallise where the various different aspects of the brief are going in each of the buildings, we'll also be teasing out aspects that relate specifically to inclusion and diversity, of which visually impaired will form part of that. In terms of active travel, as part of the sustainability targets that David mentioned earlier, a key part of that is about transport, not just in terms of electric vehicle charging, but also trying to promote a modal shift towards more active modes of transport. There's existing highways proposals in and around our project that we need to integrate with, and there may be in some cases opportunities to improve or better some of those proposals, but certainly the Queensgate Ring Road presents quite a lot of challenges in terms of active travel to the site. There's a question at the moment in terms of how we develop our brief as to where and how we house cycling facilities for staff who are using the building, but also users of the building themselves. So that work is still ongoing, but it's going to feature heavily as we develop the scheme. Servicing the outdoor space is obviously very tricky. We don't have a programme of set events that we're trying to respond to. I think the idea would be that this is flexible and could host lots of different types of events. We're talking with our landscape team and also venue specialists about how much of any equipment we have is temporary or hired, or where it might be stored within the site. We've obviously got the tunnel access that could offer some storage for some elements, such as barriers or staging as well, but it's highly likely that individual events will be serviced through service vehicles for the purpose of those events, but all of that has to be thought about and managed as the design progresses, because we don't want to end up with an aspiration for this flexible space, but in creating it, provide barriers to be able to put on some of those events. So it's good to be pointed out, and it is certainly on our radar. Helen, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, we know that Kirklees has policies on all sorts of issues to do with disability and inclusion and so on. So, we're actively reading those and using those and following those. And for example, I know you have a dementia design guide, and there's someone from the council who we're due to meet to talk about that. So there's an awful lot that we have to obviously summarize to give you kind of a 15-minute snapshot of what's actually, sort of 4 months work by a huge multidisciplinary team. So I just wanted to reassure you, that those things are part of what we're doing. And as George says, we're working with a very good access expert who is part of our design team. And so all the challenges for people with their different needs do need to be considered at this very early stage. Sometimes they can lead to contradictory results almost. The issues of ramps versus lifts versus steps for people with different mobility requirements, and so we do have to try and bring all of those together to make sure that we're as much as possible we're designing for everybody's needs.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Thank you, George. And I think, as part of that, hopefully, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I've got another point from you, from one of the other panel members. Sorry, Helen, I'll just bring you
I think there was mentioned about electric charging points, because we are looking towards green economy and to consider that basically as well.
Sure, I can see you both nodding along to that point about electric charging points.
The car park is required to have a certain number of electric charging points. The exact numbers and so on need to be finessed. We'll also be looking at there being, blue badge parking around the site and all those sorts of issues as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Martin, very, very quickly, because we're late already.
Yeah, just very quickly, just think about the car park and obviously the predecessor. In terms of the council's carbon reduction target, I wonder what it's going to be, what the considerations are for the material it's being made of, because concrete is obviously a great carbon producer, and as we've seen, it has got problems throughout its lifetime. In terms of accessibility across Queensgate, I would urge people to look to retain the existing tunnel from Queen Street South to Alfred Street.
Okay, thank you for that. David, that might be a point for you on the first one. Sorry, I can't remember what you said now, Martin, my mind's going.
It was, if you're using concrete, the CO2 carbon production of concrete for its lifetime needs to be factored into any consideration, and hopefully we've got rid of what I think was termed concrete cancer, which killed the other one off.
Thank you. David, I don't know if you can sum up points around the concrete right now, and then also there was the point about the market for the venue, the music or event space. What consideration have we done about the market for that? Thanks.
Yeah, the market for acts is being factored into the business case thinking now, and the aspirations. I mean, obviously, we'll be creating a new venue that the area does not have. So you'd be targeting complementary acts and performers to those that don't currently come to the Kirklees area. That journey past us to Manchester, Leeds, and Sheffield. So, I mean, obviously you create competition, but you'll also emphasise and improve the music in Kirklees and the acts that come here. So, it can add to the dynamics of the whole area. In terms of concrete, yes, obviously it's acknowledged in terms of it's not the most sustainable product in the world. It's a balancing point between finding the appropriate materials, those materials that have the appropriate strength for the types of structures we want to build. And so, so there'll be certain buildings where we do, but then, there are low carbon concretes now. And so we'll be presenting the cultural heart, its entirety, as a blend of different materials and structures. Overall, it's embedded carbon, and we're aware that you don't want, you want to be keeping that as low as you possibly can.
Okay, thank you. And I do understand there's some good alternatives, maybe not a lot, but there are some good alternatives to concrete these days as well, which I'm sure you'll be factoring in. Okay, well, thank you so much, George and Helen. I really enjoyed that presentation, actually. It brings it to light, and I'll say this as a resident rather than chair, I'm very excited. I've got to say I'm very excited about these plans. So thank you. We really appreciate you joining us today and sharing the plans with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for asking us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You can leave now if you want to, so you don't have to stay with us for much longer. Thank you. Not you yet. We're nearly finished. I'm just going to quickly sum up the our sort of key recommendation, thoughts, etc. For this session. So firstly, I think we'd all say we welcome the plans that we've seen from the Cultural Heart. You know, they look very positive for Huddersfield Town Centre. There was a point about connectivity raised by a number of colleagues. So this is about how we get people around the town centre, the connectivity between the bus and the train station, and also how we're building active travel and pedestrian routes. There was engagement with councillors and communication also with Scrutiny. So just making sure that we are communicating with Scrutiny properly and that councillors are engaged throughout the process. There were some thoughts about cross-party working on the plans for the Huddersfield blueprint. So just if you could have a think about that as well, please. Now I've got to try and read my writing. So in terms of the Cultural Heart plans, I think the three key points that we want sort of factored in, it does seem that you're doing this, but just to raise again is around safety, accessibility and sustainability of the plans for the Cultural Heart. I think there was something about underground tunnels for deliveries. Again, it looks like you're looking at that, but doing what we can to make sure deliveries go through the underground tunnels, and that helps to favour pedestrians in the town centre. I think that we made those points. I think that's the main points, members. Is there anything else? No. Okay, we've got those. Yolandi's noted those points as well. So thank you, members. You know, thank you to yourselves for your presentations. Very much thank you to the architects. I think that was nice to see the plans as well. Thank you, Philip, for all your help. Thank you, Yolanda, for joining us today as well. Oh gosh, we've not finished yet. Sorry, I'm ending the meeting before that. I know I'm getting a bit... I just want to check about the work programme. So we've got, for the next meeting, we have the playable spaces. So we're going to be getting an update on that. Okay, all right then. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and goodbye.